Hi, and welcome to our Introduction to Excel 2013 course. In this class, you're going to learn the basics of using Microsoft Excel 2013. And I'm actually going to switch into the outline for this course right now. And these are going to be basically the topics that we're going to go through. First thing we're going to discuss is just the basics of using Microsoft Excel, navigating around the application and different worksheets and entering data into a worksheet. And then we're going to start talking about working with simple formulas and functions inside of Microsoft Excel. We're going to learn how to use the sum function, the average function, min and max, the count function. We're going to talk about references and the different types of references that are available to use in Microsoft Excel and when you would want to use them. And we're also going to talk about the if function inside of Excel. Then we're going to move on and we're going to talk about formatting worksheets and workbooks, both structural formatting, adding rows and columns and resizing rows and columns and adding worksheets and so on and so forth, and then actually formatting the content of your worksheet, changing the fonts and the colors and the appearance of the sheet. We're then going to move on and talk about creating simple charts and graphs inside of Microsoft Excel from the data that we enter. Specifically, we're going to learn how to create line graphs and column charts. After that, we're going to talk about the sorting and filtering tools that are available for lists and tables inside of Microsoft Excel. We're going to talk about creating simple pivot tables and also how to use images, smart art, and shapes on our worksheet. So those are going to be the basic topics that we're going to go through in this course. We will have a second course available, Excel Level 2, Data Analysis and Reporting, that will expand on a lot of these topics and also add a lot of new material. So look out for that course as well. As we go through the different material, I will have different handouts available for you, and as we progress through the course, I'll tell you how to get those handouts. So let's go ahead and get started. You can see here I'm in Excel 2013's home screen, and this is going to be the way Excel appears when it first starts up. If you're used to earlier versions of Microsoft Excel, Excel 2010 or 2007, this is much different than the blank worksheet that used to come up when you started Microsoft Excel. But here, if you want to create a new blank workbook, you just select this right here. Excel has a number of built-in templates that you can explore, and you can actually search online for even more templates. The open command to open an existing workbook is right here, and any recently opened documents will be right here in this left-hand panel as well. We're just going to start with a new blank workbook, so I'm going to select this right here. And here we are inside of Microsoft Excel. Now here at the top of the window you have the ribbon area. And this is where you're going to find all the different tools and commands that you're going to need to work with your Excel spreadsheet. The ribbon has different tabs inside of it. By default, you start on the Home tab. But if I click here on Insert, Page Layout, Formulas, you'll see different sets of commands appear. We have the File tab right here, which will give you your new, open, save, save as, close, print, all those commands that are commonly associated with the File Alt menu. And from here, if I want to go back to my workbook, I just go ahead and click that arrow. So you'll see how easy it is to switch back and forth between the File panel and your actual workbook. And I'm going to go back to the Home tab, which is where we're going to spend most of our time. Now you're going to notice that the Home tab is actually divided into multiple sections. I have the clipboard section, the font section, the alignment section, so on and so forth. And frequently during the class, I'm going to say, go ahead and go to the Home tab and look in the Alignment section, for instance, or go to the Insert tab and look in the Charts section. And that's what I mean by that. You're going to also notice that there's this little icon here in the lower right-hand corner of some of the sections. Not all of the sections have that little icon. For example, styles and cells do not, but font, alignment, and number do. Clicking on that icon will bring up a dialog box that will have all the different commands that are associated with that group. For example, if I click on the icon here, as I just did, for the font section, it's going to bring up all of my font options for me. And most of the time, the buttons and commands that are in this section here are going to be what you need. But again, if there are additional options available, you can always click that little icon there and go into the dialog box. And if you're used to working with a much older version of Microsoft Excel, let's say Excel 2000 or 2003, this will be very familiar to you. And I'm just going to go ahead and click cancel there. So that's your ribbon area. Now below the ribbon area, you have this line right here. And this is called the formula line, And you can do a number of things from that line, but the thing you do most from this area is edit the contents of your cells. And you'll see how we work with that in a little bit. And then below that you have your actual workbook area. Now, a workbook in Excel is a lot like an accountant's notepad. And an accountant's notepad, obviously, if you open it up, has different sheets inside of it. And you can see here in the lower left-hand corner, I have sheet 1. If I was to click this little plus sign right here, I would be able to add a new worksheet to this workbook. So you can have multiple sheets inside of a single workbook. Each sheet is going to be divided into rows and columns. For example, I have column A, B, C, so on and so forth. And the rows are numbered. Where the rows and columns come together, it forms a square, which we call a cell. Every cell in an Excel worksheet has an address based on its column and row. So this is cell B3 because it's in column B and row 3. This is cell E7. You can always tell which cell you're currently in because it's going to have this thick bold border around it. And the row and columns will be shaded in. You can also see the actual cell address right here in the name box on the formula line. Now the last thing I'll mention before we actually start working with the worksheet itself is down here in the very lower right hand corner you're going to see a slider for zooming your worksheet in and out. If I click the plus sign right here, you'll see how I am able to zoom in and the minus sign zooms me out. And I'm going to be frequently using that so that we can highlight certain areas on the worksheet. You can feel free to zoom in and out as you need to. Now again, I mentioned that one cell is always going to be the active cell, and that's going to be the cell with this thick bold border around it. And whenever you type, what you type is going to go into that active cell. And as you've seen, I can move the active cell simply by clicking on different cells, but I can also move the active cell by using the keyboard. For example, if I press the Tab key, you'll see I move to the right. If I press Enter, it's going to move me down one row and over to where I began tabbing. So for example, if I clicked on cell D8 here, I'm in column D, I could then press tab to move myself over. When I press enter, I'm going to return back to column D, but I'm now in row 9. If you're tabbing over and you want to move back to the left, holding the shift key down and pressing tab will move you back to the left. Holding the shift key down and pressing enter will move you up instead of moving you down. So you can use tab and enter to move yourself around on your worksheet. And you can also use the arrow keys that are on your keyboard. And again, whether you use tab or enter or the arrow keys is entirely up to whatever you prefer using. You can also highlight blocks of cells inside of Microsoft Excel, just like you can highlight sentences or paragraphs inside of Word. And you do that by simply pointing at the upper left-hand corner of what you want to highlight, pressing and holding with your mouse, and dragging. And you'll see how you can highlight. I can come over here and highlight that block of cells. You can also use the keyboard to highlight a block of cells, simply by clicking or moving to the cell in the upper right-hand corner, holding the shift key down with your left hand, and then using the arrow keys to move your selection left and right or up and down. So the keyboard can also be used to select blocks of cells. Now, when you have a block of cells selected, you're going to notice that no cell has that thick bold border around it. The thick bold border is now around the actual selected area. But one of the cells is going to not be shaded in. And that's actually the active cell. That's the cell that you would actually be entering information into if you started typing. For instance, if I type hello, you'll see it goes in that cell. If I press tab, it's going to move over to the next cell in the highlighted range. Eventually, if I keep pressing tab, I'll get to the end of the highlighted area. And when I press tab again, it brings me down to the next row, but over to the first column in the highlighted area. So a lot of times when you're entering data into a range on your worksheet, it's very helpful to highlight that area and then just keep pressing tab and entering the data in. And if I move up here with my arrow keys, you'll see I lose that highlighted area. So using the arrow keys without holding shift down. If I hold shift down, it highlights. If I just use my arrow keys, it actually removes all the highlight. And obviously pressing delete will delete content that I've placed in a particular cell. So now let's go ahead and begin to enter some information into our worksheet. And that's what we're going to do in the next video. So I'll see you then.